With you, the darkness fades away. Written by Just Thinking Drabbles. Read by Arashi. Sometimes, when nights were too quiet and dark, and there came rain which pattered against their window pane in slow, lazy drizzles, Ferdinand's mind wandered away from him to places far darker and even more soundless. Even as the sleeping form of his husband Hubert laid next to him, and his light snoring filled the room with a familiar comfort, his heart still ached with something undefinable and sour. It was almost tangible, this sorrow he felt when his thoughts escaped him and travelled to a time not too far into the past, but that somehow still managed to feel like a lifetime ago. A time blemished by the sounds of clashing steel and distant war cries, the lingering, unforgettable smell of smoke and death, and the sight of blood, which stained one's thoughts long after it had been wiped from their hands. He remembered it all, with painful clarity. He turned on his side as the memories came flooding back, shying away from the potential of his husband's comfort, as he felt hot tears welling in his eyes. His hand flexed, as if to reach for his lance, a defensive quirk he found he could not shake even in peacetime. It was said that time was supposed to heal all wounds, was it not? So why then, several years after the war, did he still have sleepless nights where he couldn't unsee the faces of ones he once held dear and were taken too soon? Of course, he didn't regret his choice to follow Edelgard. Her path finally brought him and Hubert together, after all. But he would be lying if he said he hadn't wished that there might have been a more peaceful way to go about it. The tears prickling in his eyes began to fall down his cheeks then, and he attempted in vain to wipe them away with the palm of his hand. However, try as he might to keep his sobs silent so that he wouldn't wake Hubert, it was all for naught. Hubert stirred with a mumbled, unintelligible phrase before his well-attuned ears caught the sound of Ferdinand crying, and he quickly sat up. He placed a gentle hand on his shoulder, a quiet question that sought to know what had made him so upset. Oftentimes, words came easy to Ferdinand, and rare was the occasion when he did not have something to say. But in tender moments such as these, they utterly failed him. How could he ever express aloud the pain of faded fragments in time which had managed to wedge themselves into the cracks of his shattered heart? No, mere words would never be enough to display the horrors and anguish of war, or the stolen, bittersweet moments with loved ones now gone, which were so precious and unfitting in those gruesome years that they almost felt like a figment of his imagination. Yet thankfully, he didn't have to say anything, because Hubert knew. He understood it all too well, perhaps in greater depth than even Ferdinand, and he also knew that there was little comfort in speaking simply to scare away the silence. So instead, he leaned over and brushed aside the amber tendrils that had fallen onto his face before placing a gentle kiss against his head. It was followed by several others, all of which were chaste, but carried with them every ounce of affection and love that he held for him. Hubert loved him so much, madly and incandescently and wholly. Together, the two of them crafted their own sanctuary, where they were safe and at peace, as they relayed to one another the unspoken fact that even in the darkest of times they were not alone. It was true that some nights might forever bring unwelcome memories and hauntings which they both desperately wished to forget, but Ferdinand found that so long as Hubert was by his side, he could overcome it, for his husband's love was like the ever-impending light of day, constant and bright and overflowing with warmth. Having that was really all he needed.